Jessica, you failed us. Kidding.
All right. And let me just share the screen. Hang on one second. Okay, did that appear?
That's it. We
All right.
see it.
Is it large enough?
It would be better bigger.
Okay,
If you filled the screen width-wise, that would probably be optimum.
okay. Let me get down to where we were. So here is,
LU3, right?
yep, and
Yep.
I will. How's that?
Keep going. Oh, stop right there. That looks just about perfect.
Is that okay? So we can
Yep.
see the full, okay.
Okay, and for those of you that may not have been part of this before, we have gone through a number of comments that we received from the general public in our open house. And we are now working through some comments that we had asked members of our committee to submit in writing so that we would be able to kind of track better and understand better what their recommended changes were. So that's what we're doing today. We're picking back up where we left off from the last meeting 2 weeks ago at LU3 as it's labeled on the document you're seeing on your screen right now. Anyone from the committee have any questions or thoughts before we get started? So in this document, Melissa has been kind enough to go through and notate where there are specific references that apply to proposed changes in the existing zoning code or area plans or excuse me, regional plans, those kinds of things. And that's the comments that we see off to the right here. So we'll go ahead and get started here with LU3. And Melissa, if you could read that for us.
Excuse me, this is Bernice.
Yes.
When I wrote this back in August, it had the draft had changed a little bit. So I'm trying to match up what I have to the current version. And I just want to make sure I'm starting at the correct area.
This is on page 2.
Okay, your page 2 may not be my page.
Yeah, I think, so the original, Bernice, I'm looking at the original one that you sent. It's the top of page 3, I believe.
Top of page, okay, where LU3 starts.
Right.
Okay, and that says LU3, and then it says something floodplain,
Yes.
no development. Okay, what about LU3A? That is LU3A.
So,
It used to start with design.
This is the
Okay, and
document you submitted, right, Bernice?
so
Well,
what,
some of the document has been deleted because I don't know why. But
well,
some of it has been
what I
deleted.
did was went through and where there was a change from should to shall, took that part out. Just to shorten it and to focus on your text edits.
Okay, so
So,
the one that I'm holding isn't necessarily, well, this is the one I submitted. It's actually the first one you sent me back with your comments. It's got
Okay,
everything in
got
it.
it.
So, and the one
Yeah,
that
right.
we got recently has been edited by yourself. So let me look at both of them and make.
And so this one is actually LU3 Part B.
This is the document we have been working from throughout the last
Correct.
meeting also, Bernice.
Right. I had all 3 of the documents. I had the draft and I had the original document that I sent in, and then the one with Melissa's comments, and then the one that was just sent out, the edited version that had some of my comments deleted.
And the only comments that were removed were the should to shall.
Okay, I know in that LU3A, I put traffic calming street design shall be required instead of shall is strongly encouraged. And that was deleted in this.
Right. And I can pull up your original. That was, and I
You
looked
know,
at that as being the
excuse
same
me
as shout.
for just a minute here. Bernice, in the interest of productivity here, trying to bounce back and forth between 2 or 3 or 4 different documents and sort things out, I don't know is going to serve us well. We have been working from the document that you're seeing on your screen now since throughout the whole last meeting. And I would like to continue working from that document. If there are things that you believe that somehow got dropped out of this at some point, I think it would be, we'd all be best served if you could identify those
Okay,
and
sure.
submit them to us so that we could then review those.
Okay,
Will that work?
sure.
Okay. So Melissa, if you could read LU3 then.
So it'd be LU3 Part B, where it talks about floodplains, and the suggested wording is no development should be allowed in the county restricted floodplains. Conservation easements should be recorded for floodway areas. Pedestrian/equestrian trails, a minimum of 20 feet wide, should be required along all floodplains. And the addition was the part a minimum of 20 feet wide. So that was the suggested addition.
Right. And a 20-foot wide pedestrian equestrian trail to me seems awfully wide. 8 to 10 feet should allow enough room for both the pedestrian and an equestrian to pass each other safely, going opposite directions, even if a cyclist was involved, perhaps. Is there anyone on the committee that believes that we need to define a minimum of a 20-foot wide path?
I think it's for
No.
safety with horses and people and bicyclists and strollers and, you know, and that would also afford an emergency vehicle access if need be.
Which is a completely different kind of an easement and something that is identified elsewhere.
Yeah.
This is Liz. Sorry.
Could I add a little bit of clarification? 20 feet is the minimum width specified in the subdivision ordinance. And I tend to look at it the way Rob does, that 20 feet wide, when it comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, is probably not going to fly very well because of objections from property owners as well as developers. And I don't think it, I agree with Rob, 8 to 12 feet, whatever best practice is, that's the way to go.
Best practice. is
Liz,
a
could you please
term to
go
use.
ahead and share your thought now?
Oh, I was just saying, I just walked out 20 feet. That's pretty wide, but I don't ride horses a lot. I'm not equestrian anymore. So, but does anyone know the width of that nice little simple trail on Silver Saddle that's between Stardust? I should measure that. Stardust and Coachfield, because everyone uses that. Horses, bikes, motorcycles, baby buggies, runners, dogs, and no one has had a problem and everyone seems to share. And I don't know that width, but I will find out. But we'll probably be done with this tonight. But 20 feet, yeah. I just was going to say, does anyone know that width? Is that
It's
just
around 7? It's around 7 foot.
7?
Between 6
Okay,
and
because
7
it's
foot.
okay.
So is there any members of the committee that believe we need to make a change to identify a minimum of 20 feet wide, other than
No.
Bernice, I guess?
Rob,
I
this is
think-
Monica. I was just gonna throw in that I have horses, so does Evelyn, and to me, 10 feet is plenty, because usually folks tend to stop, see what's coming, work their way through it. I don't think we need 20.
Oh, good.
And I even have some pretty nutso horses.
Don't we all?
I agree with Monica. This is Evelyn. I have never been in a situation where there is a stroller, a family walking, a horse trying to go by, a cart or a bicyclist and a person walking all at the same time. That just doesn't happen.
Yep, that's
So-
true.
So,
Yep.
if maybe there's a person and a horse, so the person with the horse can see way ahead of time and stand off to the side. It's
Okay.
all just part of living out here.
It was in the 2001 area plan on page 43. It was under number 5, letter F as in Frank. It says pedestrian equestrian trails, a minimum of 20 feet wide shall be required along all floodplains. And I just think that's for liability for the county as well as the people that are going along. I've ridden on trails before where there's been somebody with a dog that wasn't used to a horse and all of a sudden started barking, and you have no place to go. And if there's a stroller ahead of you or somebody else walking, that's it was in the 2001 area plan for the last 20 years. I don't think it would be hurtful to put it in this time.
Well,
Thank you,
I'll have
Bernice.
to say that in terms of liability for the county, you're assuming that all of these trails are going to be on county-owned property. That is not the case.
So I'm going to restate my question. Is there any member of the committee other than Bernice that believes we need a 20-foot wide minimum mandatory?
Nope.
No,
Okay,
10 foot.
then we will strike that and leave that judgment up to the planning and zoning and county supervisors. And move on to our next comment, which is item number B there. Melissa, if you could, please.
Okay, did you want me to read that entire policy about the buffer zone? I'll read it.
Well, read at least through the sentence that includes the change.
And so this would be LU3, actually C. My apologies for the formatting change. The buffer zone reads a perimeter buffer zone of lots equal to or greater in size to the adjacent and or abutting minimum parcel size as specified by zoning. And the addition is in parentheses AR 2.5, AR 5 should be provided on all boundaries of a PRD abutting agriculturally or residentially zoned land.
So this would ignore the fact that there are some lots that are smaller than 2.5. And further restrictions then on this. Is that the way everyone else reads this?
Rob, you're absolutely correct about that.
And I don't know that we can treat differently zoned properties in a different way just because of the size of them. The fact that in the other sections of this document, we've already said that development can't be less than the adjacent lands to it. So I think that we've already kind of covered this with respect to the 2.5 and 5.
That's
Is there-
also covered in the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Thank you, John. Any members of the committee that would like to see AR 2.5 and 5 included in this particular sentence? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the next proposed change regarding lighting.
Okay, and so under LU policy 3, lighting, it'd be number D, lighting. If outdoor lighting is to be provided, it shall be in compliance with section 4.3 lighting of the zoning ordinance. Street lighting should be permitted. Pardon me, Sailor's joining us. Okay, she's in. So Rob Sailor's joining us now.
Yep. Welcome, Sailor.
Street lighting should be permitted only at major intersections and should be directed downward in such a manner to preserve dark skies. And that last phrase, and should be directed downward in such a manner to preserve dark skies, is the addition.
And your comments on the side, thank you, Melissa, include that dark skies already addresses this particular issue much more strongly than we can in an area plan, and would make the proposed change here unnecessary. Is there any member of the committee that feels otherwise?
Well, I just had a question for Bernice. Did you want to put this is Liz.
Liz, you just muted yourself. If that's possible.
Ha 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 there, Robbie boy. I was saying, Bernice, are you putting this in for emphasis, honey? Like, you want to say it again because it is in the ordinance, so it's really
Yes.
specific.
Because the ordinance can change, and I want this in the area plan, so when a new ordinance is generated, that this will be a guide for the new ordinance.
Well, if the ordinance changed, then your statement here saying in a manner to preserve dark skies and capitals would suggest you're referring to the ordinance itself.
And I will add one other thing to that. The ordinance is going to change, and the changes will be more restrictive,
Right, more restrictive.
substantial margin than what is in section 4.3 of the zoning code right now.
Okay,
I want to
And-
raise my hand.
yes, ma'am.
It's Harriet. I live in a remote area, and yet our people don't know about dark skies. And so there's a propensity out here for everybody to have a garage light. And some people will and some people won't turn off those garage lights. I made this comment, I don't know, a year ago, and they sent somebody out. And apparently there's not enough muscle to make them put a shade on the thing to make it downward facing. And no one wants to call the cops and nobody wants to get into a fight with all this, but is there some way that we can have a reference to, if you have an issue, you can request a letter be sent to somebody requesting that they lower the voltage on what they're putting out at night?
This is Liz. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Liz.
Dark sky, I have some pamphlets. I'll give them to you.
Oh,
I've given them to
love-
many of my neighbors, and it talks to your resource. It's a flyer, and it opens up and it says the ordinance, and it says what kind of lights are good
Yes.
and what's acceptable.
Yes,
Have you
ma'am.
seen them?
No, and that was what I wanted to do. We have new neighbors and they're delightful. They're lovely. And yet they leave
Okay.
garage lights
And-
on all night long. And we're really remote. We have animals out here and
Right.
we want to encourage it. We moved here to encourage that, not to make it more like a subdivision, but I would love some of those. So thank you, Liz. That solves me.
Yes, yes, I will send it to you.
Thank you.
So the issue that we're talking about here is specifically addressing streetlights.
No, not, well, your issue is streetlights. Mine
Yes,
is
ma'am.
lights on houses.
I'm trying to circle back to
Okay.
the agenda here. So I'll ask the question, are there any members of the committee that believe we need to extend beyond what the dark skies ordinances already do in our area plan?
Nope.
Hearing none, we will strike that and move on to the next proposed change. Russell, pay attention. Melissa, if you could read Lux.
Pardon me, I was on mute. So yeah, this would be an additional policy. And it reads, the county, I believe that's supposed to read, the county shall further enhance its policies and expand notification procedures in order to improve and provide wider awareness of zone change requests and action. So
Which
that
is
was,
something, yeah, that was something that was included in the 2001 area plan. And since the 2001 area plan, the county has modified those requirements in their zoning ordinance.
But they only use 300 feet, and that isn't adequate to notify a neighborhood of a zoning change.
I
Bernice,
believe
that-
that's the minimum, Bernice, and
Yeah.
it's usually quite more expanded than that.
And the
Well-
county does do exactly what Melissa just said. They go beyond what the minimum required by state statute is. And the state says the minimum is 300 feet. That's where that comes from.
Well, couldn't we go beyond that to a half a mile?
I just said that's already what is being a half mile. No,
Yes.
not necessary.
If you have somebody
It is
making
dependent upon the case. And to say that you have an arbitrary maximum or minimum, I think defeats the discretion that the county has or should have. I think that's actually counterproductive because we've had cases where a half mile doesn't really serve any purpose.
Well, that last year we were part of one, and the people down the street from us only had to notify people within 300 feet that they wanted to put a business on their property. And so we're on 2.5 lots. So they only notified people within 300 feet. And
Well-
there were people down the road that were affected by that because it's a dirt road and the increased traffic and all that information, they never got.
Well, do you
So-
know what the number of the case was, what type of a business it was?
Well, I don't think we need to go
That
into
is
the
what
details
affects
of
that.
that specific instance.
That instance at 300 feet isn't enough when people, like Russell Weedman mentioned, putting a sign on the gate and having people not see it, that isn't very helpful. And having the applicants collect all the comments and everything.
That's outside the scope of this comment, Bernice. Let's stay focused.
Okay, well,
on-
I think it should be beyond 300 feet.
Well, and if I
And-
could just explain further, the county not only, sends notices a minimum of 300 feet from the property boundary, we also post the property, and it does get noticed in the paper as well as on all of the agendas. So there are multiple avenues for notification of different cases. just to
Melissa, is
make
it
sure
true
that's
that you
clear.
can also sign up to be automatically notified of those types of updates?
Yes, we have a list,
Right.
a mailing list that we send all agendas out to.
And I can speak from
Well,
experience
sometimes
when I had
the acres,
say again, Bernice?
I was just gonna say that 300 feet, our lots are 330 feet across.
Right.
And that's just the next door neighbors. So that's inadequate for somebody on 2.5 acres.
Bernice,
if-
the 300 feet is from the property line, not the center of your lot. It doesn't work that way. To do it otherwise contravenes
No,
100 years of case
that-
law.
what I'm saying is they only notified the people next door to them.
Okay, so I think we understand, Bernice, where you're coming from. You had an experience that didn't work the way you had hoped it would. It's up to our county supervisors and the Planning and Zoning Commission to make the decisions about how wide that notification area is. I know from experience that it can expand dramatically. It did in my case when I applied for a CUP. And I had to notify a lot more people than just 300 feet away. So Liz has her hand up very politely. Please, Liz, share.
Oh, yes. What was Russell experience? Didn't he say something tonight that he was the only one that saw the sign?
Yes,
So, and there was no notifications except for a few people, or, so it does happen. Maybe you're supposed to do it right, but do we add this in for emphasis? I'm just asking that to the group. Do we add this in for emphasis?
Well, the statement is included here, says this, the county should enhance its policies and expand notification. Well, it's already done that. And despite the fact that it's done that, there are some people that are not pleased with the result. I'm not sure that including the statement to do it again is going to eliminate the possibility that there'll be people not pleased. Dave, did you have a comment there?
Yeah, I think what we have works to the like John said, different things that are going to be asked for to and how far it needs to be. If you're going to do a fireworks place there, then you might want to have a lot farther notification. But I think the zoning commission is what is the place to make make the actual judgment on how far to go.
This was in the 2001 area plan that the number 8 on page 44.
It's
Says
shown
the
in the
county-
notes on your comment, Bernice,
Yes.
and we've
It-
acknowledged that
it's-
already.
We've had it for the last 20 years and we've been trying to expand it, but it hasn't been expanded.
Actually, it has, if you
It has.
read Melissa's comment there.
Well, it was expanded from what?
It was enhanced as was requested by this particular comment that you're referencing.
To 300 feet. That's inadequate for 5-acre lots or 10-acre lots.
Bernice, it was
or
300
2.5
feet as a minimum. It doesn't say only 300 feet. Jim?
Okay. 300 feet is a state statute. We cannot override that because that's a state mandate. Point in case, we had 2 cases last night on planning and zoning that they took out to 1,000 foot. And we had people who were actually more than 1,000 foot that turned up at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing and spoke on it. And so the 300 foot, we have to leave there. We cannot expand on it. That's out to the discretion of the Planning and Zoning, County Planning and Zoning, who is taking care of the case as to how far we're going to take out for public comment on it.
Okay, I think we've had some pretty thorough discussion on this particular proposed change. I would like to hear if there are members of the committee other than Bernice that would like to see this change remain. Okay, hearing none, we will strike the proposed LUX here and move on to our next change regarding undeveloped Forest Service land. Melissa, if
Okay,
you could.
and that would be to a change to LU5. And it's under, actually, there's a goal above it.
Which
if
is the
you'll-
first change, right?
Right, so it's not numbered. It says undeveloped Forest Service, state and other public land in and adjacent to the planning area is preserved. And the addition was adding state and other public land.
One comment on that you really can't say that state land has to be preserved as open space or undeveloped, because the Enabling Act that brought Arizona into the Union requires that the state sell or lease the state-owned property to fund education. So it has to be, eventually, it has to be sold or leased to generate income for the state of Arizona for educational purposes.
So the goal, though, is that we retain as much of it as possible as
Right.
being undeveloped.
And the county has done that.
Right.
As a matter of fact, adjacent to Fort Tuthill most recently. But that is taxpayer money, and when it's available, it can be put to a use like that. But typically the land is auctioned.
Okay, so it sounds like legally we're not stepping on any toes by adding this. Since this is a document that is used to guide decisions, and it would actually capture the majority of the residents' desires to maintain those lands as undeveloped, I don't see a problem with keeping state and public land in this particular goal.
Yeah, if you can convince the Board of Supervisors to buy the property at auction, then boy, I'd be all for that. Anytime we can do that. That's what we're saying right there. So
Okay.
I don't see a need to change that really.
Okay. Other members of the committee, any thoughts on the change to add state and other public in this sentence? Liz, you've got a big X on your block there. Is that a hint, or is that?
No, I put my hand down and that's what it came up. I don't know.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
Good enough.
I don't know. I just think that, again, for emphasis, do we leave it there? But we don't want to be redundant too. These points are good for emphasis, but.
All
I
right.
think they reflect what the survey results exhibited.
So
Rob, did you, excuse me, want me to mention that this was also the goal and then subsequent policy that Doug Meyer commented on? Did you want to talk about that now?
Good idea.
I guess we could, although I'd kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, Mr. Meyer had submitted a letter talking about some undeveloped state trust land that has already been zoned sometime back prior to the early 80s. And his concern that that land, because it's already been zoned, appeared to, and I'm paraphrasing here, but appears to be ripe for development and for sale, and that we would want to, if at all possible, try to preserve that in its current state, not in a developed state. Am I paraphrasing fairly accurately there, Melissa?
I think it was more specific about, and I can just, if you like, I can read his suggested change to the goal, which is very similar to Bernice's.
Okay,
And the suggested change was undeveloped Forest Service and state trust land in and adjacent to the plan areas preserved. So that was a change to the goal. And then there was some changes to the policy LU5, which we haven't talked about
yeah,
yet.
we'll get to that in a sec. Okay, so we've got Mr. Meyer's comment that pretty much mirrors what Bernice has submitted here. Jim, your thoughts?
Did he say what it was zoned? Is it zoned AR 2.5, AR
AR5,
5?
I
Is
think.
it zoned open
It's-
space?
It's
AR5.
zoned AR5.
Okay.
And it's been zoned. I did have a conversation with the state about this, just to update everybody. And it's been zoned since before 1981. You know, we don't know. They did not indicate that they have any plans right now to sell it. So that was not anything that they have immediate.
And to clarify for the rest of
Yes.
the committee here, the line that we're talking about is that one that we were looking at last meeting and is commonly referred to as the Turkey Hills area. So we'll go back to this proposed change. I would like to know, I'm okay leaving this in there. Are there any other members that would like to see this addition remain in place?
Would.
This is Liz. Yes, I like it in there too.
Liz likes it. John, what did you say? I'm sorry.
I like it as is. Leave it as is.
Okay, so no change.
No change.
1 and 1. Other committee members?
Well, if
Leave it as
planning
is.
and zoning comes in wanting no change, I think they deal with this stuff. I go with his decision. I have a question just of intent. After a certain law, after certain rezoning from 10 acres to 5 acres or whatever, a downward rezoning, can there be a time limit on there? If there's nothing built after, say, 20 years, could it revert to its original? This is hypothetical and wasting time, but I'm just curious.
You know,
Okay.
Harriet, I'd love to get your answer to that question after the meeting's over. I'm sure John or Melissa or someone,
Yeah,
I don't want to go into that in detail now.
there is an answer, but it'll take a little bit.
That's
I'll
it.
talk to you on a separate thing, John. Thank you.
So it sounds like I have about 3 saying remain the same, a couple saying, I think Liz and I said it would be okay.
What
So we're
about me?
3-2. It
It's
would be
3-3.
probably not appropriate for you to vote on your own proposal.
Why not?
Any other
President-
members have a
Presidents
thought?
vote for themselves.
Hey, Rob,
Well,
this is
Yes, ma'am.
Monica.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry,
I
Monica, go
just,
ahead.
I wanted to kind of go back to what John Ruggles was trying to say, and the whole legal part about all this, or a public's right. If the state were to exchange out land, do we have the right to say that then that land can't be developed? If that land is purchased by somebody, then that somebody can develop it in an exchange.
No, we don't have that right. If the state
That's-
sells the land, they'll have to then apply for a rezoning for that land.
Right.
We don't have any right to say what that can or cannot be.
And that the fact that they cannot develop it, we can't tell
Right,
them they
that's
cannot develop
right.
it. Okay, then I don't want it in there. I just see us violating things that can't happen.
Well,
And that compromises our entire plan.
The answer to this is very much the same as the answer to Harriet's question. It would take a while to go through it, but very briefly, if land is exchanged, and we had one of those exchanges occur recently, then if it does not have any pre-existing zoning, it automatically becomes zoned as open space. And then the zoning and rezoning process starts all over after that for a developer or a buyer of that property. So that's how it works.
And that rezoning would have to comply with all the requirements of all the recommendations in the area plan and all the zoning and PRD or DRO requirements.
Right, with one exception, and that is we have to comply with state statute also. And that is the thing that gets us all of these 36 and 40 acre ranchettes,
Okay,
which evades a lot of that control that the county may have over it.
gotcha.
Rob, this is Melissa. Could I just add something to the conversation?
Well,
Just-
I'd like to stay focused on a decision on this particular ad. It sounded like the majority of the people in the committee were not in support of it, and they're happy with the way that it was originally worded. And if that's the case, then I'm good with moving on to the next proposed change unless someone else on the committee has another question.
Are we going to be going over Doug Meyer's comments also?
Doug Meyer's comment or next comment is regarding LU5, which is the next thing that we're getting ready to talk about, Bernice. So yes.
Okay, well, he did say undeveloped Forest Service and state trust land in and adjacent to the planning area is preserved. That's right in line with our survey.
It's basically what you're proposing here already, Bernice, and the committee has said that there isn't support for that. Right? Evelyn?
Yeah, can you explain why it is unnecessary to add state trust?
Adding the state trust means that we're talking about land that we actually don't have any real authority over, and that the state is required by law to eventually sell or lease. So incorporating state into this statement is basically contrary to what state law requires the state itself to, or federal law requires the state to do, and doesn't give any additional authority or input from this document to anyone that would be using it in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Could it be sold to someone that is going to preserve it as open space?
Yes, it could.
Once you own the property, you have the right to do with it as you please, including apply for a zoning permit or a zoning change. If it's already zoned open space and you just want to leave it that way, absolutely, you could do that.
This is
Well-
the way the state wrote the Constitution. It's how they pay for education. As
Right.
opposed to taxation, they sell state lands. And so if you want to support schools, you have to sell state lands unless you change the law and get different legislatures. I mean, this is a change in policy at the legislative level, not us.
Okay, well-
Harriet, that was the Enabling Act of
Yep.
1912, and that was passed by Congress.
We're getting too deep into the history here, folks.
Okay,
Sorry.
good.
I
Thank
taught
you.
it too long.
Melissa has a comment, please.
Thanks. Just wanted to point out, this is a goal. It's not a policy. And the point that it makes about the area of these lands are preserved could be a goal in your area plan. I don't mean to throw a wrench in this conversation, but that could be a goal, especially related to the policy that is coming next, because some of these state lands have in the past been the subject of open space bond initiatives that have not been funded because of recognized sensitive land. So I just wanted to mention that as a goal, thinking of it as a goal could be something in the area plan, whether or not it's actually how that's addressed, the details is in the policy.
Thank you, Melissa. And it is right next door to Walnut Canyon, and we do have a herd of elk back there. Lots of archaeological artifacts.
Bernice, you're getting ahead of us here
Yeah.
again into LU5. We're still trying to get through the previous statement here. And I'm hearing a lack of support for incorporating the change. Unless there's other members of the committee that counted differently than I do, I'm going to suggest that we strike the proposed change following undeveloped forest service and move on to LU5.
Okay, I'm thinking sort of like what Melissa said. If it's just a goal, then what does it hurt to put it in there?
Well, because it's a goal that is encouraging the state not to comply with the US or the federal law.
But what in 20 years, the federal law changes and we just have this as a goal?
It was something that was established as part of establishing the state of Arizona, Evelyn. So I would suspect it's extremely unlikely that would change.
Yeah, we'd have to secede from the union.
Okay,
Can we have a hand vote, please?
Sure. Anyone that is in favor of leaving the proposed change for Bernice, could you please raise your hand on the screen using the reactions button on the bottom right side of your screen? I am counting 2.
Wait,
And Liz, you can lower your hand when you're done and that X will go away. So I'm counting 3, which is still less than the majority. Everyone has had an opportunity to vote. And we will move to strike that particular proposed change and move on to LU5.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the changes to LU5, LU5 reads to preserve public lands as open space. The rural growth boundaries established through the Flagstaff area regional plan should be implemented, enforced, and maintained in order to define the extent of lands that are suitable for rural development. So the change is the addition of the words enforced and maintained and deleting developable.
Okay, so stating that something should be enforced or maintained borders on the edge of redundancy, in my opinion. Harriet and Bernice, just for reference, you still both have your hands up. I don't know that we need to be redundant in this document. And striking developable.
I think that was done because development is in there twice.
Yeah. Seems to make sense because we close with development. So committee comments.
Nothing more than to say, I simply agree with you on this one, Rob.
Okay. Hearing no other committee comments, it sounds like enforced and maintained should be struck and developable should also be struck. Does any committee member have a conflict with that? And once we've finished that, then we're going to talk about Doug's proposed change to LU5, which hopefully, Melissa, are you able to display that on the screen?
Yes, I would need to move out of this view.
Right. So Mr. Meyer was kind enough to submit a written proposed change to LU5 based on our request from his previous public comments. Melissa will bring those up so that we can review his proposed change and discuss that. And thank you, Doug, for the time and effort in doing that.
Okay, I am grabbing that right now. My apologies.
We hear you
Okay.
hard at work clicking away.
Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. That's good.
Go back to this. All right, I will do a new share. All right, did that display?
It has.
Okay,
So-
is that? Okay,
It was larger, but
let me.
that's okay.
I don't know if I can enlarge this right now.
So we'll just look at A here, and Melissa, if you could read that to us, please.
Yeah, there were also edits to the, so A was an additional sub policy to LU5.
Right.
And there were changes to LU5 as well.
Oh, okay.
So let me read those. So the changes to LU5 to preserve publicly owned lands as open space, the /rural add urban growth boundaries established to the Flagstaff area regional plan should be maintained in order to define the extent of developable land. If I could just clarify something, the growth boundaries in the area plan are actually identified as rural growth boundaries. And then the additional sub policy that Doug has recommended is all new.
Well,
It would read-
let's
Okay.
tackle just the LU5 first. So we're more clearly stating what lands we're talking about here. So publicly owned lands would include state trust lands, it would include county lands, it would include Forest Service lands, any of that. So we're more clearly defining what lands we're talking about here as open space. As Melissa pointed out, rural is the correct term
Right.
here. Is that what you're
That's
suggesting,
right.
Melissa?
That's right.
As defined by the regional plan?
That's
so
right. Yeah. The
our
growth
question-
boundaries.
Our question here then is, what does the committee believe about adding publicly owned lands into this particular statement?
Rob, I think that that covers all the bases rather well. And Doug's comment, I think, is this is, I think, covering what he brought to our attention, the problem that state land is not readily accessible to the general public without a permit, one way or the other.
Right. Okay. Any other members of the committee like to comment on the changes to proposed changes to LU5, the publicly owned?
I like the changes that Doug submitted.
Thank you, Bernice. Dave?
Yeah, I think if it's rural growth boundaries, then we should put it as what's commonly done.
Right. So I think we concur that rural will remain so it's consistent with the regional plan. We're just focusing on the publicly owned part right now. Liz?
So again, are we doing this just to emphasize publicly owned? Because isn't public land the same thing as publicly owned? We're doing this to just enhance this
We're
or
more
to
clearly
emphasize it, I
defining.
guess.
We're more clearly defining.
Defining, okay. Clearly defining, okay.
I
So
have a
perhaps folks
question.
that weren't part of this process could read through this and better understand it.
Okay,
I have-
public land, publicly owned, okay.
I have a question about the use of the word rural versus urban growth boundaries established through the Flagstaff area regional plan. Is that the city plan? What keeps the urban growth from encroaching on the rural land?
This, I believe the Flagstaff area regional plan is referring to there's only one regional plan here. And it
right.
incorporates the county and the city,
Oh,
or this
okay.
part of the county and the city.
That's right.
Yeah, it's only part of the county.
Right.
And the boundaries are very clearly defined in the plan itself and the maps. It's bigger than you think.
So focusing back on publicly owned, Bernice has said she's in favor of it. Anyone else in favor of, I would say that's fine to more clearly define it. Anyone else for or against?
Very much for.
Okay,
I'm
Jim?
for it.
for it.
For
Thank
it.
you.
For it.
All right. That change will be incorporated. The publicly owned will be added. And then Melissa, he has proposed a new subsection A here. Could you read that for us, please?
Residential pre-zoning on Arizona state trust land in the DPTF planning area is incompatible with current community values. A residential subdivision application on these lands should trigger the county supervisors to consider their authority to disapprove such application under the subdivision ordinance section 1.2 as being inconsistent with the guidance in this area plan.
So my first thought here is I'm sure Mr. Meyer knows exactly what he's talking about here, but we haven't clearly defined that particular parcel, and it might be beneficial to define specifically what we're talking about if we're going to ask for special consideration for it here. And I believe since that's an entire section, it would be pretty easy to define somehow in here with that. Is that true, Melissa?
Well, there's only one section of state trust land in the planning area that has zoning on it, and it's the one that we've talked about, the AR5
Yeah, and I think we would
section.
need to, just because there's only one doesn't mean there couldn't be more in the future. And I think we should be specific here with what we're talking about.
One other thing that I'd like to comment on, and it's basically procedural, that it's not just the county supervisors. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviews something like this first and makes a recommendation. So just including the Planning and Zoning Commission along with the Board of Supervisors, it would be the way to go if this is retained. And I think it's kind of redundant to say, consider their authority. They already have the authority.
So perhaps a better second sentence then would be something to the effect of a statement that the residents want that land preserved as is, despite the fact that it was pre-zoned for something else.
Well, actually, you have pre-zoning right now, but as Doug pointed out, the problem is residentially zoned like those the AR5 zoning that exists that goes back a ways. But anything in the future automatically becomes open space zoning, regardless of where the land comes from.
Right, but we're talking about this specific parcel and the desire of the residents of this planning area to keep that parcel as is.
Yeah, and there's not a problem with putting that in there. Like I said, the only thing that I had a suggestion on was procedural grounds. That
If I,
go ahead, Melissa.
sorry, if I could just clarify something too, because I did contact state lands about this, and two things. I just wanted to remind everybody that if this policy was written this way and taking it, to the time where if there was ever a residential, if it ever did become sold, and if there ever was a residential subdivision proposed, a subdivision is by far the best way to control wildcatting or land divisions on that property. If this policy, the other way to look at this policy is to think that if the subdivision ordinance was not applied, then that 640 acres would be subject to just dividing as land division permits under the AR5 zoning, which is, and now that you all have seen the consequences of that throughout the county. So I just wanted to remind everybody that the subdivision ordinance is actually quite powerful tool to have organized and very compatible development. So that's something to think about. And the other consideration is that State Lands Department did mention that although they don't have any funding, there are some grants available through the Arizona, state parks. They manage federal funds, land and conservation funds that possibly could be used to buy state lands to preserve it as open space. So it might be worthwhile thinking of this in terms of preservation versus not utilizing a tool like the subdivision ordinance. I hope
Okay.
that made sense.
It did. I'm of the opinion that the second sentence here is potentially more harmful than beneficial, understanding that better now how the subdivision ordinance, if worst case scenario, this were sold and began to be or wanted to be developed, the subdivision ordinance is the one that gives us the most power over controlling that. So I guess I would oppose eliminating that as an option. And I'm still in favor of making a statement that this specific piece of property is one that we particularly would want to see preserved as open space.
Rob, I've got to agree with you, and Melissa also. My experience on the P&Z Commission also backs up everything that Melissa had to say about this subdivision ordinance, and it was rewritten and modified recently. It is probably the best tool to control this sort of thing that could be a problem that we have.
Okay. Other members of the committee, any thoughts on what we're proposing right now? Is the first sentence basically being modified slightly to more accurately define the parcel that we're talking about, and then a follow-on sentence that specified the desire of our community to maintain that as undeveloped public open space. Well, it's not public open space right now, but as undeveloped space. Anyone opposed to those two proposed changes?
This is Liz, and I was saying, yeah, the second sentence should be taken out. I don't know about the one that you proposed. I think we have to discuss.
Right. In place of the second sentence is what I was.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't hear anyone opposed to those changes, so hopefully Jessica captured all of that and can sort it out later. And thank you very much, Mr. Meyer, for your thoughtful inputs that caused us to put some more thought into this. And Melissa, I guess if you can go back to sharing the Bernice document, that would be great.
Oh, one more question. Are we going to go back to this once they redo it and check out exactly how it turned out, correct? Like,
oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure we're just not going on.
We don't want to spend all the time real time trying to, dot I's and things like that.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
The wordsmith it. I get it. I get it. Okay.
We've been running for about an hour. Anybody want a 5-minute break?
Sure. Time for some virtual pizza.
It's virtual pizza.
No.
No? Okay. Then we're going to continue moving on. Appreciate all these hardworking people. So let's see. Got through LU5. So we're to a new Lux. And Melissa, if you could read that.
Yes. The Forest Service is strongly requested to prohibit dispersed camping and campfires within 1 mile or greater of private property in the interests of resource protection and urban interface fire protection. And there's just a note here that that policy is in your natural environment, parks, recreation, trails and open space section.
So since that's already covered in NE 6.
No. Excuse me. I added the words or greater to 1 mile, and in the NE 6, it doesn't have the words or greater. So could we add those words or greater to the NE 6?
So what does or greater mean? 50?
It means farther than 1 mile.
But it's an ambiguous means nothing kind of a thing.
It's a limit. If
1
there's
mile
an
is a
area
limit.
that is, well,
1
if
mile
an
is a
area
limit.
is prone to wildfires, or it's close to residential or commercial or industrial areas, then the Forest Service could designate farther camping and campfires away from those areas. It would protect the property.
Does the Forest Service currently have the authority and exercise that to restrict
Yes.
camping within a mile?
Right now they do have signs up around the Turkey Hills. Some of the places are maybe a mile, it may be less than a mile. The whole area, you're not supposed to camp and have campfires.
So Turkey Hills is not Forest Service, that's state trust land, but Sailor, I
Part of
see
it
your
is-
hand up.
Part of it is Forest Service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sailor?
Rob,
I raised my hand before Bernice started talking, or like right around the same time. So I don't have any input as far as her 1 mile comment. So I don't know if you guys want to finish that.
Okay. Harriet?
Yeah, as someone, if you know where I live on with Forest Service on two sides. And what we know is that they put up signs and nobody pays any attention in reality. And until we've had this dry spell, we've been very lucky, I think.
Mhm.
And I think this is what the residents are beginning to feel, Rob, is that the people around us are using public lands, which they're welcome to do, but I don't think they are aware of or know about housing and danger when they pull in with their huge recreation vehicles, and they're here to have fun. I really understand that, but I don't think they really understand the danger the rest of us are in. So I don't know how to phrase it or where to put it or anything else, but we don't seem to be on high alert out here about wildfire danger and gunfire danger or shoot. I mean, they're legal hunters, exactly, but they don't know where we are. So I don't know how to approach this, but I do understand that the sentiment, and I'm speaking from my neighborhood now, because we're right on the edge. We took the risk, we know that, but it seems like the risk is increasing without any real guidance. How about
Yeah.
that? Thank you.
Okay, so it currently says a mile in our existing policy NE6.
Yes.
And the question here is, should we say or greater?
Right.
And so I would like to get specific committee yes or no's on whether or greater needs to be included in policy NE6. Harriet and Sailor, both your hands are up, so I'm not sure if that's intentional.
I think Sailor had
Real
a
quick,
comment.
I'll put mine down. I'll put mine down right now.
All righty. I just want to make sure I'm being fair to everyone here.
one
Any
thing,
committee members believe we should include or greater?
I don't think it'll make much difference, as you pointed out, Rob. And the other thing is, I hope everyone has read Sailor's comments in the chat section
Yes.
about strongly encouraged rather than requested. She's got a point.
Right here. Instead of requested is strongly encouraged.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so we'll add encouraged, remove or greater, unless any member of the committee, any majority of the committee opposes that suggestion. All right.
Okay,
So
let me
those are-
just clarify. So you are changing it to is strongly encouraged
Yes,
to prohibit dispersed camping and campfires within 1 mile or greater of private property in the
not,
interest.
we're striking or greater.
Okay,
You're adding or greater or deleting it?
We're deleting or greater.
Okay. I still think that the way the wind blows, the way the fire danger is, and the lack of resources we have out here to fight fires, if we have a subdivision or some type of private property structure that is next to the Forest Service where the campfires can get away from them, like we've had out here in the Turkey Hills, it would be good to have the campfires at a greater distance from the houses.
Then shouldn't we say that, say your specific distance that we want instead of just something that,
Well, but there isn't we saw in the Schultz fire how it moved several miles in less than one afternoon.
Yes.
So
yes.
1 mile
The
would have made
farther we get,
absolutely,
better.
1 mile would have made no difference whatsoever in that scenario.
so
Nor
that's what I'm
would
saying,
greater than 1
if we
mile.
want to emphasize greater, then let's put the specifics in.
Well,
But there's
right?
no formula.
It
There
could
is no
be
answer.
Oh, there's no formula set by the Forest Service. I missed that part if you guys discussed that.
Right. That's one of those
Is that
things
correct?
that can
Okay.
be at their discretion. They may see greater than 1
Oh,
mile. It's up to the Forest Service to determine whether even a mile is adequate.
oh, I see.
It is entirely discretionary on their part.
We're
So we
asking
can-
them.
So
to
even
consider.
putting 1 mile in there is not even, because they're going to decide that. So
That is
why are we
correct.
even putting that? Then why are we even putting that in there? Dispersed camping at the discretion of the Forest Service. I mean, I don't know, just say 1 mile and they're not even gonna regard that, then
They do.
why are we
regard
putting it
around
in there,
Turkey
Bernice?
Hills. They do
Pardon me?
regard it around the Turkey Hills. We've had several fires back there, and many of them are from campfires that are, well, just like anywhere in the forest, campfires left unattended. And just having the signs that we have, it keeps people from having campfires next to the residential areas, and quite a good ways away from it too.
So you're putting this in here, Bernice, and it was originally taken out or not included because we don't have that power. It's up to the Forest Service, and now we're going to put it back in and just say, this is what we're emphasizing?
No, Liz, with this.
I'm not getting why we have this, okay.
This entire policy, except for the 2 words or greater, exists today in our area plan as an E6. The only discussion that we're having here is, are the 2 words or greater of any benefit here?
Okay. And since we can't decide that, I guess it doesn't.
I think if it keeps this structure from burning down, it might help.
So then, Bernice, using that logic, we should probably limit it to like 100 miles.
Okay.
See, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
No,
We've got to be
I'm
specific.
not
Don't put it
saying-
in there.
I'm just saying we're leaving it up to the Forest Service to go 1 mile. We're requesting that they go 1 mile or greater at their own discretion. They know which areas are at high risk. They know, what's going on in some of these areas. They may want to go greater than 1 mile in
When they
some
need to go
areas,
greater
and
than 1
would be
mile.
fine in others.
When they
then
need to
why
go
would you-
greater than 1 mile, they go all the way and they say no campfires. When
So
the conditions
therefore-
warrant it, they shut down the forest.
Therefore,
So-
why would you want to say or greater?
So
I'm just making the argument. for
Go ahead,
that.
Sailor.
so I guess I keep looking at this and I'm like, what I think you mean, Bernice, is at least 1 mile. Like, I don't like the language within 1 mile or greater doesn't even make any sense on its own. And so I hear what you're saying, but aren't you saying at least 1 mile?
That we could say that.
And
A
dispersed
minimum of
camping
1 mile.
is different than campfires, if we're really going to get into this. I can disperse camp without a campfire, and why
Yeah, I
should
do
I
it all
have
the
to be
time.
more than a mile away from someone?
Right, that's true. That's a good point.
I would say that's a good argument, Rob. And I think Bernice, you should be able to sort of empathize with that idea, just because sometimes like I would car camp and maybe I just wanted to get up early and take pictures, and so I would just crash out in the back of my truck. I'm not having a campfire, I'm not bothering anybody, but there are houses within 1 mile of my truck, especially over off of Little Eldon Road. So yeah, I do think you're saying 2 different things there.
So what we're really
Well, this-
asking here is, we would like campfires to be a minimum of 1 mile from
At least a
any-
mile.
Yes.
a minimum of a mile,
Yes.
no less than a mile
Yeah.
away from any private property, right? That's
Right.
what we're really trying to say here.
Yes.
So why don't we say that?
Well, it's requested to prohibit within 1 mile or greater of private property.
No,
Seems like we're using a lot of words to say.
So
Dave, you had a quick thought?
linguistically, like it makes zero sense. Like, I know what you're trying to get at, Bernice, but that sentence makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't even say what you're trying to say if you read it. So if you want to say that, you're going to have to say it in a different way.
Dave, what you have to say?
yes, I don't think or greater should be in there. It's, you know, what we're trying to do is to set at least a minimum limit on this. And, you know, the Forest Service, and you know, if there's going to be a, you know, a really great possibility of fires, then I think that you know, that the authorities that have that land will do something about that. And prohibit, you know, maybe prohibit camping until it rains, you know, whatever. That's their job, is to do that.
Thank you, Dave.
Just one comment. The Forest Service has already done that in the area around the old Hutton Ranch property. They have recently prohibited camping and campfires. I don't know what the exact boundaries of the area, but and put up closure signs for some of the social trails created by off-road vehicles. So they will do that.
Can I also mention that I don't know the last time with all of the giant fires we've had, like how many times structures have even been destroyed. So it seems that things are working out pretty well.
Rob, if I may, what I'm hearing is that the committee has kind of pulled this apart to two issues. One is dispersed camping and the other is campfires. Or maybe it's campfires associated with the dispersed campers. So is the issue here really the fire issue? So possibly a way to word this would be the Forest Service is strongly encouraged to prohibit dispersed camping with campfires.
I don't think we talk about dispersed camping at all.
Okay, so then
the whole
to
point of
prohibit
this is the risk of
campfires,
fire.
to prohibit campfires, a minimum of 1 mile of
I
private
think
property.
we should include dispersed camping because we have people out here that camp and throw down cigarettes and they have tailgate fires. And they have fireworks, and it's not just the campfires that are causing the fire. I think we should just keep NA 6 like we have it, and I withdraw this for LUX or greater since it's not going to fly anyway. And move on.
After reading this, I'm in favor of removing dispersed camping because I don't think we should impact on people that choose to do dispersed camping. We count on them when they ban forest or campfires to not have fires. It's their forest too, and they're entitled to camp in it. If our thought here is that we're trying to reduce risk of the urban fire interface boundary, then we should focus on campfires.
Oh, actually, Rob, I think Bernice has a point. And as I said, the Forest Service has already done that in the area around the Hutton Ranch, the old former Hutton Ranch property. So either way,
all right, so I guess the question now is Bernice has withdrawn her proposed change, so we're not discussing a greater. All we're discussing now is, does dispersed camping belong in this statement? And so I would like to see,
That wasn't part of my suggestion.
I understand, but as a result of further review of this particular issue, we can go outside of what your suggestion was.
Rob,
Sailor?
I'd like to remove the dispersed camping, and mainly just because I feel like it's not consistent with our character of what kind of neighborhood we are. And I don't want to get into this place of, kicking people out doing country things that country people do when we're a rural community.
Gotcha.
And so the people
you,
that are
Sailor.
coming and camping, so anyway, not everybody who camps does negative things.
Jim, you're next.
What does the open space NE6 say?
I can read it. It currently reads, the
you.
Forest Service is requested to prohibit dispersed camping and campfires within 1 mile of private property in the interests of resource protection and urban interface fire protection. So it is this text. It's just a different policy number.
Just minus the or greater.
Mhm.
Why don't we strike this all together and just keep the one in open space policy?
Well,
What
that's,
Melissa read was in the 2001 area plan word for word.
But we can strike it,
and Jim, we are going to strike it from here regardless.
right?
So it's
Because
it's
it
in a different
exists, so-
chapter.
We're just
Because
discussing.
it's in a different chapter. Okay, so how about this? At the discretion of the Forest Service, comma, it is strongly encouraged to prohibit campfires within 1 mile of private property, period.
Works for me.
I like it.
Take out dispersed camping. We still have campfires within 1 mile.
Can we do
and it's from
minimal?
Private property.
Minimal?
No.
No.
Nope. At the discretion of the Forest Service. We can't tell the federal government what to do on their land. We can just make
Okay.
we can just ask them, please, could you do this? We are encouraging them to do it.
Okay.
I'll sign
And
up.
after property, put a period. We're done.
Yep. We're done as far as I'm concerned, right there.
Okay.
I'm in on that.
Read that one more time, Jim, please.
At the discretion of the Forest Service, comma, it is strongly encouraged to prohibit campfires within 1 mile of private property, period. And
Yeah, I like
strike the
that.
rest.
Okay.
Nice and simple.
Okay.
Correct.
Nicely done. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we have all this video recorded, so we'll be able to get that
Got
word
it.
for word. All right. So we're ready to move on. And Melissa, if you could read the next proposed new policy.
And I'll read this and point out that there's a version of this also in natural environment, trails and open space policy number NE8. But there are some additions here that Bernice is suggesting. The Forest Service and State Land Department shall actively seek and consider Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood community input regarding land exchange proposals and sales in the planning area. The and State Land Department and sales is the addition to that current policy number NE8.
So it appears the recommendation here is to duplicate something that exists in the open space policy and add to it, including using the word shall, which we won't, regardless. So what we're talking about here is I suspect not going to exist in this particular chapter, but what we are talking about is just like last time, the open space policy NE8.
Correct.
So committee thoughts on the proposed change to add and State Land Department and sales.
Actually, when you think about what the state land department is mandated to do with their property, that is something they do not do. They don't have to, and they don't. Public input, yeah, but it's not considered because what they have to do is auction or lease the property. And whether the public likes it or not does not enter into how they do that.
There's no public input whatsoever in a state land trust sale?
You can give them public input, but in the past, most of the sales.
Okay.
The
Well,
property is auctioned.
As long as there
That is
is an avenue for them to accept public input, then
It's not,
this
really-
works.
it's not really a part of the decision-making process for them. Especially if it's auctioned.
Committee thoughts?
I think it's important to have public input and especially public knowledge of what's going on so that we can try to get together with organizations and the grants that might be available to purchase the land as open space.
Well, Bernice is absolutely right about one part of that, and that is public knowledge.
Yeah.
It's quite different.
It's
And
in.
there are legal noticing requirements already for that. Is that correct, John?
Yes,
And the public doesn't know anything about any of this. And there's, you'd have to change the Constitution to really change the process, is my understanding.
no, you don't have to do it that way.
Okay.
You can do that through legislation.
Well, yeah, okay.
That is not changing the Constitution.
True, you can legislate or change the Constitution. Absolutely, absolutely. So you have
Well-
to ask your potential Congress people what their stands are, and that would be an issue that we ought to address maybe in upcoming elections and have that issue as something we want to know about.
Well, you have to do a little bit of digging if you know where to look. It's one of the great things about the internet. It requires some citizen initiative sometimes.
Yeah.
If I could just read the policy. So the policy, or rather the goal that this is nested under is not on this page, but it reads, the community is involved in land management decisions affecting public lands in the study area. That's the overarching goal.
Maybe our goal should be to educate our public into what the system is like and make sure they understand the parameters. Most people buy out here and don't know any of it.
Harriet's got a point there.
You know, any 8 under that, the Forest Service should actively seek. I'm just adding, and the State Land Department
Right.
as a public land. That's all I'm doing.
You can say should actively seek and consider, but what effect is that going to have on anything? You would be best to address our legislative delegation in terms of that.
Absolutely. It's a legislative or constitutional issue. So it's our either state or federal officers, but now we know it's an issue. So what do we do with it? Because we know it's an issue. Do we start talking about it and educating and letting citizens know? So maybe the first step for us is to educate.
Here it is as it's currently in your draft under this goal. And number 8, as Bernice just read, it currently reads, the Forest Service should actively seek and consider Doney Park Timberline Fernwood community input regarding land exchange proposals in the planning area.
So this works for things that community input actually has an impact on, which is the Forest Service level. And it probably should go beyond exchange. It should include sale and exchange because they do also sell.
Yes.
And if that were added to this NE8, then this is as far as an area plan can go with requesting that kind of participation from the agency responsible for it.
And
we just-
Rob
yeah.
is correct about this, and I believe the last land exchange that we dealt with here in the county, that the Forest Service did seek public comment on it prior to the exchange of that property.
Can we find some way to give guidance to people who want to know more, what to refer to? Tell them if you're interested in understanding the background and how things work, refer to articles or laws. But maybe if the public wanted guidance, where would they go?
Let's ponder that for a moment, Liz.
Well, my question is, if we're not saying we want input from a community that's not knowledgeable of this, see, because you just said, well, a while back, they can't seek because they don't get it out that they're doing this, right? The Forest Service has not actively educated the public of what's going down for land exchange or land sale proposals. So shouldn't we put something like that? How can we seek input if they didn't know it was happening? And didn't you just say that, Harriet? And didn't you agree, John, that they don't have to come out and tell the community for,
That's at
correct.
the state, that's at the state level, Liz. The
Oh,
federal
okay.
level do.
Okay, the federal, okay.
I
Because
will
I thought we were
remind you
talking
guys,
about
I just would like to remind you guys, this area plan, this is a very broad brush policy here, in that it does go beyond, any authority that the county has in these primary decisions that will be that will utilize this document. So remember, this document is mainly used for actions that the county has authority over: subdivisions, rezonings, conditional use permits, that sort of thing. So this is a great policy and goal, but it's not something that the county will be actually able to enforce, if you will.
The federal and the state government are not responsible for referring to our area plan when they make decisions. Is the short version of what she just said. I would like to propose that we add land sales slant exchange proposals and leave NE8 as it stands.
With the addition of sales.
Yes.
Good suggestion. I'm with you on that one, Rob.
Does anyone oppose that idea? Okay. We will do that, and then Melissa, reshare the other document and we can go on from.
Okay, so this, I need to minimize that, is again, and I'll just jump over here. It's Natural Environment Policy number 10. And the proposal to it is Old Caves Crater, Turkey Tanks, Turkey Hills, O'Neill Crater, the Rio de Flag, and significant archaeological sites urgently require preservation by the Forest Service and State Land Department and should not be considered for sale or exchange in any future Forest Service or state land plans. So the suggestion is to add the term State Land Department to that policy. Here's as it is written today.
Okay. And I believe that we have fairly thoroughly discussed that concept in the previous policy here. The fact that the state is not required, nor do they desire our inputs on this. So I'm not sure there's any value in adding this to our area plan. Looks like Liz and Dave both have their hands up.
Oh, no,
Nope.
mistake, I'll take it.
Any committee thoughts, or are we, based on the previous conversation, remaining consistent with our philosophy here and not including the State Land Department in this plan?
I agree with you, Rob.
Okay. Anyone opposed to not accepting these two changes and keeping it as it is in NE10?
What are you trying to take out take out of
The
that?
proposed changes is all, Dave.
All of the.
Where it says
proposed
and
changes.
state land department or state land. Now, the for sale is consistent with what we just had a conversation about also, and should remain. Everybody's good with that? We'll move on.
Okay. Just making some notes. The next one would be to Natural Environment Policy 14. New residential subdivisions adjacent to national forest and other public land shall be required to provide trail easement access to the forest. The developers shall be required to construct the trail in accordance to county standards. The way it's currently written is number 14.
I have a question. By
Please do.
by requiring access, do we make it what, an uncontrolled? I mean, I don't know why you would restrict access, but what you're saying is you don't want private property owners to, I guess, erect fences that get in your way, getting over to the park the way you want it. But it seems to me there's got to be some control, or else there's no point in having a fence. I don't know how you limit, how you say it, but you either have fences so that people don't have strangers walking through their land or animals or whatever, or you have some fences, or you have all fences. And I don't know how you regulate or what they want.
Right, Melissa, could you go back to the NE 14, please?
Yeah, I'm seeing, I think I have the incorrect number next to it.
To your point, Harriet, we've discussed before the fact that we cannot require
Yeah.
these accesses across private land.
Yeah,
And we certainly can't do it with respect to state land.
right.
And the addition here really is just addressing the fact that we're adding it to the state. So NE 14 as it reads.
It's actually quite
suggests-
updated from the old policy, the 2001. It's been quite changed. So.
So it does encourage cooperation
Yeah.
between the
appropriate.
county and subdivision developers and the National Forest Service to provide access to the forest.
Yeah. And I think the word appropriate is the right word.
Harriet is absolutely right about that.
Yes.
That is
yeah.
part of the process at the Planning and Zoning Commission and the recommendations we forward to the board of supervisors.
Yeah.
Because the Forest Service
Love it.
does not want the creation of more social trails in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
Melissa, if we
agree.
could go back now, Melissa, to the Harriet document. There we go. Thank you. So the proposed change here, what I'm hearing from everyone is we're good with the way that it currently reads in NE 14.
Yes.
I think so.
Anyone opposed to that idea? Okay, we'll move on to the next one there, Melissa, please.
Okay, so it's now Natural Environment Policy NE 15. The county shall investigate means to acquire public access easements to the forest in lot split areas. And the difference is, I believe the word should is
And
being
lot
suggested
split.
should be shall, and lot split areas, right? So it reads now, the county should investigate means to acquire public access easements to the forest areas. Period.
So why would we add just in the case of lot splits? And usually lot splits aren't very controllable. I mean, if we leave it the way it is, it's open for whatever happens.
Lot splits or otherwise, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Monica's got a point for that.
Yeah, I agree. You know, like I said, I did this back in August and we had some of these conversations after I had looked at
Okay.
this.
So we'll move on to the next comment.
Okay, and it is natural environment policy related to natural environment policy number 16. Off-highway vehicle travel should be restricted to roadways designated by the Forest Service and to specific areas, for example, the Cinder Hills area. The Forest Service is requested to obtain public input prior to designated OHV roadways and areas. And that policy 16 and there's part of it. It's, I believe it's identical. Bernice, is that right?
It's close.
Yeah, it's closed. I was thinking of like, for example, the Cinder Hills, and include the OHV, the acronym OHV to that
It's-
area, because the Cinder Hills is a huge area and not all of it is the OHV area.
So NE 16 currently does incorporate OHV area.
Mhm.
Oh, it
So
does.
that
Or
means-
it does say, for example, the Cinder Hills OHV area right here.
Oh, good. Okay.
So you're good with that, Bernice?
Yes.
All right, we'll move on then.
Okay.
You know, it's 7:45. Do we need to pick a place where we're going to stop in this to do the public comment?
I don't, it's actually 11 minutes to 8, and I was gonna go through one more, if that's okay with
Okay.
you, Bernice.
That's great.
Okay,
Okay. So we're back to land use then, shifting back, and it looks like the first suggested change is to a goal that says a variety of housing opportunities exist for individuals and families with a range of incomes. I need to flip back to that section. And that goal as written now, it says a variety of housing opportunities exist for individuals and families. And if you give me a second, I can go up there.
right. So we'd agreed during the previous discussion that with a range of incomes was not appropriate to incorporate into that particular policy or goal.
That's fine.
Correct. Part. Sorry for the scrolling. I know it makes you do, okay, there we go. So here's the goal. A variety of housing opportunities exist for individuals and families, period. And the suggestion is to take out a variety and just have housing opportunities exist for individuals and families with a range of incomes.
You
Well,
don't need
That's what it
both.
was in the
You
old
don't
plan.
need both. You don't need both. One or the other. You don't need a variety of and a range of.
Well, a range of incomes is not going to be there.
Right, I agree with you, Harriet.
A range of income is not there.
So right now, this is how it reads. A variety of housing opportunities exist for individuals and families.
And so the only discussion we're having here is should a variety of be included or not included in this particular goal?
Correct.
Well, a variety is really, when you look at the zoning across the planning area, is really what you have.
From 1 acre up?
And yes,
ADUs,
it has been expanded even to allow the use of essentially an RV as a permanent residence. And that's in the zoning code. We just had a case on that last night at P&Z.
okay.
I
So
think I'd rather have a variety of housing opportunities than to start referring to the income as being a driver.
You bet. Monica's got a point there, and I agree.
Absolutely, you don't want, that's a can of worms.
Yeah,
is
that's
anyone
fine.
here opposed to include and continuing to include the words a variety of in this goal? With that unanimous consent, we are going to complete our discussion of the proposed changes here this evening and step into the wrapping up of this meeting. So let's see how it goes. First thing will be the schedule. Moving forward. And speaking of the schedule, while she's getting there, I'd like to thank everyone for your cooperation and having our mini meeting tonight so we can continue to get through this process.
Did that
Appreciate
display?
that. Yes, it is. So our next scheduled meeting will be February the 10th. And we'll pick up exactly where we left off on the 10th of February.
You mean March the 10th?
No,
Oh, February.
Oh, yeah,
February.
February. I don't even know what year it is. Way to go,
Sorry.
Monica.
Ouch.
There we go, February 10th.
yep.
Yep.
And then we can go move on to the next slide. And so at this point, we would like any members of the public who have additional thoughts after listening to all of that, they would like to share with us to take your 3 minutes, and please do so.
Just a quick question.
Dave.
Are we still planning to do the 6 o'clock or 5:30 or what?
Now, that'll be a standard meeting, so we'll be starting at 5 p.m. And Mr. Meyer.
Everybody,
Oh, I'm sorry, Sheila, he had his hand up first.
okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, again, say thank you to the committee for taking the time to consider my comment from last meeting. And I appreciate all the discussion. I'm just going to try to make this really quick. That the only thing that bothered me a little bit tonight was we did kind of lose focus with the idea that the main audience for this area plan is really planning and zoning and the county supervisors. I think there is some room for conflict, shall we say, for adverse goals. I think that's what we're trying to do. And we can say some things, even if those things are not what the law requires somebody else to do. We shouldn't be spending so much time worried about what the state land department thinks, or we certainly don't want to do anything illegal in the plan, but we can do a lot of things in the realm of simply communicating what the community wants. And so I'm just going to end there. That's what this plan is supposed to be. Tell the both Planning and Zoning Commission and our supervisors what we want. And let's not worry too much about what the rest of the state of Arizona is going to think. We can tell them what we want and let the chips fall. Ultimately, Planning and Zoning and the county supervisors have to make the calls on these. They have to make the decision. It's in their lap. They've got to do it. All we can do is tell them what we want. And so I would hope that as things go forward, we don't lose time talking about things that we can't do. Let's just keep our focus on who's the audience for the plan. It's the Planning and Zoning Commission and the supervisors. Let's tell them what we want and let them decide what to do. As long as we've communicated clearly what we want, that's what I think the committee's job is to do. So that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Doug. Sheila.
Thank you, committee, for your hard work. I really appreciate it. I don't know how to make my hand go away, but there it is. I agree with Mr. Meyer. Thank you so much for bringing to our attention. This is the first time I've heard the word pre-zoning on state land. It's quite alarming. I think I'm still in shock from that. I have friends that live at the far west end of Sunset Boulevard that will be quite interested in that hectare. The second thing is Silver Saddle Trail that was brought up, I think by Liz. She wanted to know the width. Somebody said it is 7 feet. in the multimodal plan, that final plan from November of 2010, that trail is slated to be paved over. And I know Liz and Melissa have both said that multimodal plan is outdated, but right now that's on the shelf. And I really am interested in if that multimodal plan is going to be up for revision or whatever they call it to bring it up to date. Because I don't want any of our existing trails that get used to be paved over. I have been that
Correct.
person with my horse in the middle of my street where we've had the brand new neighbors who have purchased in this latest rush on housing come out with their small children and their strollers and their bicycles. And it's a little bit of chaos right in the center of my street as I'm leading my horse to get out on a trail ride. So I think 10 feet wide is a nice width. It always scares me that the width of whatever we put in is going to encourage drunk drivers to drive on it, but you know, there's stuff that we just can't control. Thank you, Harriet, for referring to covering garage lights so the light is directed to the ground. I appreciate that, and I'm going to pester Liz to get my hands on some of those pamphlets on our lighting ordinance for my neighbors. And that is it. Thank you guys so much for your hard work.
Thank you, Sheila. Any other members of the public that would like to share a thought with us this evening? Ken? Ken, we're not hearing you if you're trying to speak. It looks like you're unmuted. Now you're muted. Okay. I'm going to take that as you don't have anything to share. So we have an opportunity to thank all those members of the public who have and who have been listening in on this. I'd now like to open the floor to any members of the committee that would like to share a thought.
Hey, Rob, just one thing. I would like to say to Doug Meyer that he has hit the nail on the head very squarely. And the other thing is that perhaps there is more flexibility in what state statute allows the Planning and Zoning Commission to do, as well as the Board of Supervisors, when it comes to following along with a lot of what the community would like in this respect. And what the other thing in the update to the zoning ordinance, that was one of my gripes that people listen to, that we need the flexibility to do that, exactly what Doug was talking about. So thank you very much.
All righty. And Liz, looks like you've got a hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say to Harriet and Sheila, I will get you those pamphlets. Harriet, I know your address. Sheila, you know my phone number, so just send me a text, your address, and I will send it to you, a packet. And again, Sheila, in the transportation section, which we haven't gone through yet, it says twice this multimodal has to be updated. And the trails, like I've talked to you about with Patrick Sweeney saying, we're going to use them as our standard, but we'll get to that when we get to transportation. We're using the Forest Service as the standard of what we're going to be using as trails. And it may say it's going to be paved, but it's not going to be paved because it's going to be updated. And all that information in the old one is just such old data, the safety studies, what people wanted then, it just has to be updated because things are changing out here. And I agree with you. I don't want them paved. I didn't help write that multimodal. So I agree with you. And thank you for bringing that up and sticking with us tonight and saying your words at the end of the comment period.
Thank you, Liz. Any other members of the committee? All right, seeing none.
This is Bernice. I'm sorry, I'm a little slow here. I just wanted to thank all the members of the committee, and I especially want to thank the members of the community that are signing on to this meeting, and I hope to hear more from you and try to get others involved also. And I really appreciate the work that Doug did on his suggestions for our for the area plan, for the talking about what he did in the land use. I really appreciate that. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Bernice. I think we are now ready to conclude our meeting. I would like to thank everyone for your participation this evening and look forward to seeing you at next month's meeting 2 weeks from today.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Rob.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good work.
Sorry, you guys, I lost my connection,
Oh,
but now I'm back.
Okay.
okay, good. Now we're ending.
Still recording, yeah.
That was
Yes, we
strange.
leave.
I lost it too, Melissa.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, it must
The county
be,
went down, huh?
yeah, I don't know. If they're trying to update possibly, I don't know.
Probably, they always do it right during these meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, right at 8 o'clock, you both lost connection. I think it's pretty obvious what happened.
Yeah.
Okay, strange.
Could you
Let me-
maybe unjoin one
stop
other
sharing.
person and stop recording?
Yeah, he sent a message saying he left, but he's
Right.
still,
Did
let's see.
the recording stop yet?
No.
Okay.